Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the EU Missions on Adaptation to Climate Change Lunchtime Seminar. My name is Thomas Dvorak, and I will be the moderator of this session. Today we will hear from our colleagues from the GRC about the Risk Data Hub, in particular the vulnerability dashboard. I'm very happy that the colleagues Gustav Eklund and Andrea Sibilia are here and will share their latest product. I think it was released only a few weeks ago. And before we start, I have a few housekeeping rules to inform you. If you have any questions to the colleagues, write your questions in the questions and answer function or in the webinar's chat. The other leading question behind this webinar we want to know at the end is, do you think that the Risk Data Hub is something that supports your work, and how you probably can use that? If you could give us feedback on that, that would be very much appreciated. Today's objective is to learn about the GRC Risk Data Hub and what it covers, what are the functionalities, what information can be found in the vulnerability dashboard, and how it can be used in particular on the regional level. I've put the link to the tool into the slides, but it's also in the chat, and you can play around while listening to the presentation, because Andrea in particular is going to be the one that gives us a live demonstration on the website. And before we start, I would like to switch to a short Slido questionnaire, so we better understand where you're coming from and why you are here. So please scan the QR code on the screen, and then select what type of organization do you represent. You find also the link, if you don't want to scan that with your mobile phone, in the chat. Michi has put the link in. So maybe a couple of minutes on where you are from, or not, which organization you are from, not necessarily the nationality. So we have already the first 10 people using Slido. That is great. So at the moment we are about 65 persons, which is about a third of those who have, a bit more than a third than those who have registered. So I assume still people are joining. Okay. We keep the poll open during the presentation, so you can still add your background here. It's interesting to see, because this is the first time where the scientific and research institutions are in the lead, and the regional and local authority are second. Normally, it's the other way around. The regional and local authorities are the most attending ones, and the scientific community is somewhere in the middle placed. So let's see how this picture is changing at the end. And having said that, I hand the floor over to Gustav, giving the introduction and the presentation on the Risk Data Hubs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. I didn't vote, so I'm not part of the scientific community today. So just so you know, for the record.
Good.
So I will share my screen. Just confirm if you can see it, so everything is fine. It's good? Okay, thank you very much. So hello, everybody. My name is Gustav Eklund, and I work at the GRC in ISPRA, and the GRC in ISPRA. And I work for the Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Center, which is in Unit E1 of the GRC. And I'm here with my colleague Andrea. He will be more specific on technical details and live demonstration, as Thomas said. I will be more generic with the risk of saying things you know already, but I'm going to do a very, very brief presentation of the GRC, the DRMKC, and then the Risk Data Hub. And then I will leave Andrea the vulnerability. So the GRC is the Joint Research Center with headquarters in Brussels and research facilities around Europe. So we are in 5 locations in Spain, in Sevilla, and we are here in Ispra in Italy. There's also Karlsruhe, Geel, and Petten, in Holland and Belgium and in Germany. So and this is our we're under the commissioner for innovation, research, and culture. So that's Ilyana Ivanova, and our DG is Stephen Quest at the moment. So I'll move on. So the GRC has a budget about 380 million. And also we have a staff about 2,800 people. The biggest site at the moment is the Ispra site. And around Europe, we have 50 research facilities, 110 online databases, and also a lot of models on biophysical models, economic models, and so on. So that's the GRC. You can go online and look for it if you want to see everything we do, but I think you know it already. So basically, our mission statement is basically 3 keywords. It's anticipate, integrate, and impact. So what we're trying to do is with anticipate, we're trying to look ahead and see what's coming to us, and also to be better prepared and react more efficiently to the new challenges, which is something that's very relevant for our work with the vulnerability as well. We also try to integrate, connecting dots and disentangling crossovers, thanks to multidisciplinary and analytical capability. And obviously, we try to measure the impact of EU policies, supporting design and monitoring policies, and performance indicators. All of these 3 key mission statements is very relevant for what we do in the work with the Risk Data Hub and the DRMKC. Basically, the GRC offers scientific excellence, so high quality research, accompanied by high standards of scientific integrity and transparency, which is very important for us. Everything we have is open source. It's online methodologies and data. So everything you see today, you're going to find if you go to our website. And you can download data as well if you want. Also, anticipation of new challenges and opportunities to prepare policymakers for the complex and interlinked challenges we face today. And obviously, the capacity to map, review, analyze, and synthesize the best available evidence in support of EU policies. So this is our next one. I will be very brief, but this is just a visual presentation of what we are dealing with. Basically, we have loads of information coming from all over. I would add on to this list actually more things. We also have regional offices. We have authorities. We have information from all over the place, which is part of the anticipation. We're trying to make sense of it. We filter, we distill it, we make a message, and we integrate it basically now. And at the end, it comes out as the impact pillar basically. So we perform the task of synthesizing this information through expertise and development of knowledge management procedures, which is obviously what we're doing here. So we make sense, we filter, we visualize the data as well, so you'll be able to use it in an easy way. So how do we do this? Basically, we have something which is called the knowledge centers. So we are one of those. We are the DRMKC, so we're in the top left, the Knowledge Center for Disaster Risk Management. We are the oldest knowledge center, so we started already about 10 years ago, something like that. But then now there are more as well. So we have the Knowledge Center for Territorial Policies, which is also very interesting, and all of them are they do very, very interesting stuff, and they very synthesize the science for practitioners and for policymakers and for authorities. So you try to put these things together in one place, basically. So that's also something you can go and look at if you're interested. So knowledge management for disaster risk management. I will move on to the next one. This is us. So basically, we were created to enhance the knowledge base in the field of disaster risk management specifically, and also to act as an interface between science and policy making. So the creation and evolution of this is obviously based on the decision to establish the new Union Civil Protection Mechanism, so the UCPM, and also it's developed over time with the revisions in 2019 and then 2021. And in 2021, we also created a knowledge network to bring together civil protection and disaster management experts and organizations. And also the DRMKC is now in the core of the science pillar of the UCPM knowledge network. And basically, we have 3 pillars, which are not pillars here, but they're part of this loop, which is partnership. So we try to build network with scientific communities and operational actors, so practitioners, member states, regions. So you're a big part of that, within and also outside the EU, to transfer science into policy. The second one is knowledge, so where we can identify the needs, so where needs are identified, and then knowledge is integrated, consolidated, and shared across sectors. So basically, the Risk Data Hub as well, which we'll see later, it was one of the results of a gap analysis from member states specifically. And the last one is innovation. So we co-develop innovative solutions for mitigation of disasters and impacts of disasters. So main activities briefly, you have to go, I think the link is shared in the chat, or if it's not, it will be. DRMKC, we do knowledge management activities. We create systems and models and platforms and data repositories as Risk Data Hub. We deal a lot with knowledge sharing and capacity development and outreach activities. So all of this you could read already on the slide. But also, if you go to the site, you will see many different platforms and information we have there. So GCRI, for example, the Global Conflict Index. We have Inform, which is an index for risk management, global, country level. So that's the risk of humanitarian crisis. We have also Projects Explorer, so you can go on and look for DRM projects all over, which have been done and funded all over Europe and the world. There's a Gaps Explorer, which so far only has forest fires in there, but we try to offer science-based knowledge and targeted recommendations tailored to different stakeholder profiles, so scientists, practitioners, and policymakers regarding the way forward within a specific topic, basically. So that's my quick introduction of very general stuff. So I'm going to go to Risk Data Hub. So Risk Data Hub is it's where we curate data of risk, and we're a team of 6 persons doing it. So me, Gustav Eklund, and Andrea Sibiglia will present later. We also have Christos, Samuel, David, and Sandro, who are working with us. You see on the screen right now. Tomorrow, if the people joining will hear me say this again, but just so you know, tomorrow we will have Christos and Samuel speaking as well, together with me. And David and Sandro are very competent IT developers as well. So next slide. What do we do? What are we basically? So we it's a data hub for pan-European risk and disaster loss data. So we host and share disaster risk and loss data at the level of Europe, and we try to improve access to data, basically. So all of this data, you can go and download it. You can get it through API if you request a key. Everything is open and transparent. That's what we're all about, basically. And it's also a platform for sharing information on risk and loss data. So what we do is we share insights on losses, on hazard, on exposure, vulnerabilities. So we see today, we try to compute probabilistic risk for Europe, and also provide information about the methodology we are using, and methodologies that can be used for risk calculation. We work obviously with DG Klima, outputs with DG RTD, DG ECO, lately a lot with the Committee of the Regions. We were there a couple of days in Brussels the beginning of this week. And we also try to work a bit to input into disaster resilience goals using some of our models to help to monitor or to explore the monitoring of those. So and this is the main site, but you'll see on the right, that's the main landing page, and you can, from this landing page, you can go into your interested topics and see what's there, basically. So disaster risk, basically. So for us, it's composed of 3 components, which is hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. So I will be very brief about hazard and exposure, because today it's all about vulnerability, but you will see those 2 components tomorrow in more detail. But basically, as you see in our little graphic there, this is how we define our risk. And just to note that in the vulnerability, we also have sensitivity indicators, and we have also adaptive capacity indicators. So we also have the capacity, coping capacity in there, basically. So this is hazard and exposure in one slide, basically. So I have a couple of quotes there. I won't read them to you, because you can read them yourselves. But in essence, if you look at the visualization below, exposure are the elements at risk. This is the hazard footprint for let's say floods or something like that. It's just to show how it works. And once you put those two together, you can get the exposed asset within a hazard footprint. And there you have, that's the first step towards calculating risk. Then you have to quantify how those assets are vulnerable or resilient to be able to understand, what will be your potential impact of this risk, basically. So going to the next one, we also host external projects or results from external projects. We hosted Peseta 4 results. This is a projection of economic impacts of climate change in sectors of the European Union based on bottom-up analysis. So they do for different warming levels, as you know, and the assessment looks at the effects of people, economic sectors, and environment for agriculture, energy, river flooding, coastal floods, and so on. Very relevant for the ongoing development and implementation of the European climate policy on mitigation adaptation, obviously. Another project, which is maybe a bit more relevant here, is very regional. We had a project from a PhD student in Politecnico di Milano who have used our platform to host loss data at the level of municipality, so the LAU level for us, which we use in the codes, in Alicante. And more specifically, in the city of Benidorm in Alicante, we actually had data, which is on the right side, down to the postal code level. So they used it to store data and to see the losses over the last, I think it was 25 years or so. So they can see what has been lost and where in what sectors. So we host lots of this data as well. So that's actually the last one from me. So I will leave this one, which was the first slide as well. And I will leave the floor now to my colleague Andrea. And I just remind Andrea to tell me when to move forward in the slideshow.
Sure.
It goes automatically. I'm sorry for that.
No problem. Well, thanks, Gustav. So basically, before diving into vulnerability, you can go on the next slide, Gustav, so we can see the first part here. Before diving into the vulnerability dashboard, I make a short introduction about vulnerability, so to get familiar to the concept of vulnerability. What is vulnerability? So as Gustav has already mentioned, vulnerability is one essential part of the risk analysis together with the, sorry, can you go back? Together with hazard and exposure. Here we have the definition from the UN DRR, but in general we can have, let's say, synthesize the concept of vulnerability as the capacity, the capability of an entity to cope with an adverse event in general. In any case, from this definition that you see here, there are many words, many terms that also are part of the vulnerability framework that we have on the risk data hub. So, but why do we talk a lot about vulnerability? And we can see the answer on the next slide about this. So basically, we said that we define risk as hazard and exposure and vulnerability, but we talk a lot about vulnerability. Why we do that? Because basically, as you see here, it's if we act on vulnerability is the easiest way to minimize the risk. And why that? Because basically, thinking about hazard and exposure, we can't do much in terms of the hazard because we cannot control the intensity, the frequency of hazardous event. We can maybe predict them in some cases, but in terms of their force, we can't do much in this case. We can do a little bit more on the exposure because basically, if you think, for example, a flood event, we can maybe mitigate the effect of floods through planting vegetation, through creating floodways. But in any case, if you have a city that is totally exposed to an event, you can't totally displace the population from a place to another. This is a very huge physical limit that we have in terms of the exposure. On vulnerability, we can act instead on a much more punctual way. What I mean by this, we can act on policy measures in order to make community flourish. So a very good, if we have a community that is very healthy, let's say, it's more able to cope against adverse events. We can also act on the physical characteristic of our structure, for example, the buildings, in order to make them more stronger for against seismic events, or make them more insulated against heat waves or cold waves. And this helps basically to decrease the vulnerability against other events. But how do we measure the vulnerability then? We can go to the next slide then. So within the risk data, we developed this vulnerability framework, let's say, that is developed through pyramids, let's say, so the geographic levels and the structure of the index. In terms of geographic levels, we have country, NUTS2, and NUTS3, that basically are country, regions, and provinces, for the ones that are not familiar with the NUTS acronym from GISCO. And no problem. And while in the structure, in terms of the index structure, you see that we have a sort of hierarchical structure here. At the bottom, we have the indicators that are aggregated in dimension, in subdimension, dimensions, and eventually we have the final index. You see that the dimensions actually reflect what we saw in the definition from the UN DRR at the beginning of the vulnerability. So we have those 5 dimensions in our index: the social, political, environmental, economic, and physical. Those 2 pyramids interact to each other in order to provide a final measure of the vulnerability of a specific area. In the next slide, we provide here a screenshot of the main interface of the vulnerability dashboard. That's the instrument that we provide in order to monitor the vulnerability of specific areas. And you see, basically, we highlighted the 2 pyramids that I was mentioning before. So the geographic levels at the bottom, where you have the country NUTS2 and NUTS3, and then within each level we have the index structure through the time series of the vulnerability index and then the 5 dimension. Here we have also the link. The link is also provided in the chat for the vulnerability, but I'll show you then how to reach that. No problem, Gustav, you can go on to the next one. Here a few example about how you can use vulnerability data in terms of applications. So you can use it for time series analysis, spatial analysis, so to do research basically. But well, our main focus is of course the policy making, meaning that the vulnerability dashboard is thought in order to provide an instrument to monitor vulnerability of the area of specific areas across Europe, providing details not only about the index itself, but also about the underlying dimensions and also the indicators. Doing this, policymakers, but also any kind of user that wants to access the vulnerability dashboard is able to see how vulnerability evolves over time and what are the elements that actually affect the vulnerability. So this introduction is concluded. Now I'm going to share my screen in order to show you a live demonstration of the vulnerability dashboard itself. So
Thank you very much, Andrea. I'll just make a comment. I'm sorry to the participants. We were in the Committee of Regions Expo on Monday and Tuesday, and we had a slideshow going automatically. So obviously, some slides we had automatically run time. So apologize for that. Go ahead, Andrea.
okay. Oh, sorry, Gustav. Can you remove your sharing because I cannot share if you're sharing. Okay. Let me know if you can see my screen. You should see an empty
Yes,
web page.
it's coming up. Yeah, it's there.
Okay, basically, I want to show you how to reach the vulnerability dashboard, but also the risk data hub website. So if you search for risk data hub on the web, you should find it among the top results. So if you simply click on it, you can reach our website here. And as Gustav was showing before, you can see all the modules related to the project. So loss data, the vulnerability, risk analysis, and also the data. We have all the data that we have are open data, so you can easily access these. There is also an API where you can request as a key to basically connect to our database and download the data. Here in vulnerability to disaster, you see that we have the vulnerability dashboard here. So clicking here, you see that it appears, and I suggest to use this option, application full screen view, in order to open at full screen. I have already loaded here, and so basically Here you have the home page at the beginning, where you have a short introduction of the index, some additional information, and then additional resources that basically provides you instruction about how to navigate the dashboard, and also basically the underlying indicators and their rationale. So the document about the navigation is actually instructions about how to click around and check all the options that are available on the dashboard. And here the table related to the indicators. So let me zoom in a little bit. So you see that for each level, we have the indicators, the related subdimension and dimension. And then the source, if it is related to a sensitivity or adaptive capacity. And the most important thing is the rationale. So why we choose that specific indicator. At the bottom of the table, you see the link to all the data sources that we use to retrieve all the indicators that we choose, and below the complete list of reference related to the indicators above. So going back on the vulnerability dashboard, you see we have the country level. The structure of the three levels, you see that is basically the same. What changes here in the dashboard is the options to select the areas. Basically, at NUTS 3 level, you can select country, NUTS 2, and NUTS 3. At country level, of course, you can select only the country because it's the only thing available. The structure is exactly the same. So basically, when you access to a level, if you do not select anything, and by default nothing is selected, you see the average at European level for that at European scale, sorry, for that specific level. Here in the time series, we have the vulnerability index and then the dimension. In order to see dimensions and indicators, you have to select a country. So let's say that I select Italy, since we are located in ISPRA with the JRC. Once I select a country, you see that we have the list. We have the list here of the indicators with at the top the dimension, and clicking on the dimension, you can actually see the time series of the that specific dimension. You can enlarge by clicking here at the top right corner. And you see that once you select the dimension or also the indicators, for example, you have two different lines. The gray one is the European average, while the blue one is the actual value of the selected country for the specific indicators. We also provide the forecast for the up to 2030 to see what could be the possible evolution of vulnerability in the near future. Latest available data are at the 2022, because those are mainly provided by Eurostat. That's the main our data source. So by mid 2024, probably there will be updated on Eurostat. So we will also able to have data for 2023 as actual data. So far, the latest available data is 2022, and it is also mentioned here on the other charts of the dashboard. If you go at a deeper level, in order to select and to see values for that specific region, you have to follow a sort of cascading mechanism on the selector. So you have to select first the country. So let's go back to Italy. So you have the average in this case for the country here at now for the NUTS 2 of that country, and you see that now you have also more options here, because you will have the country average also in addition to the European average. So if we select Lombardy, sorry, I misspelled this. Okay, Lombardy, that's the region where we are located. Once I select the region, you see that basically now we have three lines. Three lines here because we have the actual value, the blue one, the country average, the yellow one, and then the European average. Again, going through the indicators, you can see that you can explore them and basically see how they evolve over time. One thing to remark in this case is that you can see basically there is the indicator granularity. Since we are at NUTS 2 level, you see that the dimension is specified at NUTS 2. If you go back, for example, sorry, at country level, the granularity of the dimension match the level that you are looking at. While the indicators, actually, each indicator is specific for each single level. In any case, indicators are aggregated together in order to provide a final index for each specific level. What I mean is that even at country level, you will see indicators at NUTS2 and NUTS3. And also, if you are at NUTS2 and NUTS3, you will see all other indicators for different levels. The idea is that if you look in an area, a country, you will have a vulnerability index that provide information not only on the vulnerability for the country at country level, but also will take into account the regional and local variability of the vulnerability. Vice versa, if you are at NUTS2 and NUTS3, you will see an index that takes into account not only the vulnerability characteristics specific of that region, but it will also take into account the, let's say, surrounding environment, meaning, and by saying that, I mean the characteristic of the region or the characteristic of the country in which that specific province is included. And so, well, that's pretty much it. Additional functionalities that the dashboard has, just to show you also the NUTS3. Let's follow the mechanism, the cascading mechanism. So selecting first the country, then the region, and eventually the province of Varese. That's where Ispra is located, and so you have all the timeline. And additional information for indicators for 2022, sorry, for dimension at 2022 can be found in the option here that I selected. If you click here, there are info, and by clicking on info, you will be redirected to the indicators again, to the table of indicators. The other option, info maps, opens those 6 maps that basically show the dimension for 2022 for the latest available data. You can enlarge the maps and explore them. So for the vulnerability index, you see we have this visualization that allows with this slider to compare the vulnerability index for different levels. In this case, it's country against NUTS2, but we can, for example, select NUTS3 and NUTS2, and you see basically, okay, basically you see the comparison between NUTS2 and NUTS3 in this case. While other maps, in this case, let's zoom on the social dimension. For the other maps, you have the opportunity to basically choose the layer that you want.
Andrea?
Yes?
The slides are moving a bit slow, so take a bit more time when you change
sorry,
maps,
yes.
because they appear on the screen a bit too slow. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm so sorry. Yes, thanks for telling me, Thomas. So, not sure if you missed something here on the vulnerability index, general vulnerability index, but basically here the slider that allows you to compare different levels. Selecting here from the layer list, you can compare NUTS2 against NUTS3 against NUTS2, or NUTS3 against countries, NUTS2 against countries, and so on. While what I was showing before, Thomas told me that there was a lag on the screen. Basically, in the dimensions, you can select different levels, basically, and see the spatial distribution of the dimension of the score of the dimension across Europe for 2022 for the latest available year by selecting the layer that you want. With this, I conclude my overview of the dashboard. I give maybe the word, not sure if Gustav, you wanna say a few remarks, concluding remarks before passing to the questions, or?
There's not much to say. I can reply to one comment I saw in the chat. Sorry,
Okay.
if you allow me, Thomas. It was about sending emails to our functional mailbox.
Yeah.
We monitor as best we can, but last week and this week it's been the most
A bit
hectic weeks
crazy.
we had in a long time. So this
Yeah.
is this is the reason we get back to all mails, but have a little bit of patience and we'll get back to you.
Okay. I think that's understandable because you're not the only one that struggles at the moment with a lot of workload. And I assume that the hub also has now created a lot of attention and you get probably more than 2 emails. Anyway, I have 2 questions here. One is, are the outermost regions as well covered by the risk data hub, or is it just continental Europe plus Spanish islands, Portuguese islands close to Africa or Europe?
Maybe I leave the word to Andrea, but I'm pretty sure Madeira is covered. I'm not sure about Réunion, Andrea. I don't think so. It depends on where we have the data availability through Eurostat. So if we have too much missing data in certain regions, we don't feel confident enough to use that to use the information to compute the index because it's just not reliable enough. So it depends on the data availability, but for sure we have islands, Spanish islands, and we have Madeira as well. Those are part of it. Yes.
Okay. The other question is, I have noted down from your presentation, Andrea, is it possible, or in fact, also by the presentation given by Gustav, is it possible to bring in regional data if you have it? And what's the process behind, if it's possible, or are you just taking Eurostat?
Yeah, that's a good question. Should I go, Andrea, or?
Go, Gustav.
Yeah. So yes and no. Yes and yes. It's a hard question to answer. So what we're doing at the moment, it's very hard to use regional data because then often between regions the data doesn't match, and the indicators might be different. What we are trying to do, because we would like to go more local, even further down, because we think the local level is the most important one for this kind of assessments we're doing. So at the moment, we're actually looking at and thinking about launching some kind of case study. We can't say exactly how it will be done at the moment, but where we want to go down to the very local level and map indicators available against what we think should be measured. And in that case, in a sense, validate the framework in that way. But right now, for example, we can host, for example, if a region want to do an assessment themselves, we could host that data on the hub. And if they want to show an example of we do a risk assessment in this way, or we have this kind of lost data, as you saw from Alicante, for example, also for vulnerability, I think this is something that we haven't done so far, but it's definitely something that we can take into considerations. And we would love to meet the regions and talk further, what their ideas and feedback on this, because in every meeting we have the regions directly. Those are extremely useful for us in this context there. So that's very good.
Thanks for the answer. I mean, I think as soon as you have a better understanding how you will set up the process, it's not a problem. And I'm pretty sure that several of the mission on adaptation regions will be happy to discuss this for you and find a way forward. We can also publish a call if needed to ask for testing regions. Let's put it that way. Couple of other questions in the chat. Yes, the recording will be available. It will be sent out with the email, and the slides, I assume you can share them as well, or?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay. The other question was, is it possible to download the data from the maps for a specific NUTS3 region, for example, or is it just on the hub?
The data, the visualizations that you see here on the dashboard, no, you can't download data directly on the dashboard, but you have to go through the API actually. I was looking at the messages here. If you, this morning, but this week with the team, we were pretty busy because we had a summit during the last 2 days and so on. So it could be that we missed a request on our functional mailbox. Don't worry, in case resend the request for the API key if you haven't received any reply, because this morning my colleagues were actually getting in touch with an email that we received. But you have to go through the API. In this case, the data that you receive are tabular data, but if you download the NUTS areas from GISCO, I will share the link here on the chat. If you download the NUTS area on GISCO, you can easily join with NUTS 2021, the latest version. NUTS 2021. You can join it by code and everything, and you can produce your own maps.
Okay, I see from the chat also a lot of congratulations to the work. And in addition to that, one question is, will that work be replicated outside Europe, or is there a plan to cover other regions as well, bordering Europe?
Yeah, we don't have a plan for the moment. I would say we actually had a workshop in the March of last year with the representatives from Morocco, and they were here. And we were trying to use the entire risk data hub, the risk part of it, so hazard, exposure, and vulnerability, and make an example, a kind of a mock-up system for them to use how we apply our methodology to the data. It's not easy because we are following the NAS classification, and we have to change that, obviously, if we're going to go outside of Europe. I mean, it's in our mind, but currently there's no plan to do it. We have to find a different way to do it in that case.
Okay, and then there was a question related to a specific project input, risk inform. What is the relation to it?
Yeah,
And
so
I know also that when I had a presentation from the vulnerability dashboard of the EA, what's the relation to this one? So this is not a question from the chat, but in a presentation of the vulnerability to the EA, this,
yeah. I can take those. Andrea can fill in if he needs, but the Inform, it's a project group which is in the same team. So in the DRMKC, they work on risk. They do risk from an index perspective. So they use indicators for also the hazard exposure and vulnerability and lack of coping capacity. We have coping capacity within our vulnerability component, actually. But they work at the country level at the moment, and they also, at least where we're sitting and looking at it, and also they do work with humanitarian risks. So we cover risks for population, for buildings, depending on the asset we have available through exposure layers, we cover it, and we do probabilistic calculation of the risk, basically. That's the relation to Inform. I mean, we obviously try to keep consistent with the terminology as much as we can, but we also focus on going as local as possible. And for them, it's more complicated because they have global coverage, and it's already very much more. They have Inform subnational, but it's much more time consuming to get that to match across different places. The climate adapt platform, I don't know. We are the vulnerability framework that we have right now, or a huge part of it is actually that's the vulnerability that they use on climate adapt platform right now. So it's our framework. The only thing is which is removed, we have actually a physical dimension, which is based on empirical data losses in the past, which we think is a very good indicator of going forward to see the vulnerability of a region. If you experience a shock, that means that you're more vulnerable in the future. It will go down, it will get better, but in the beginning, yes. So they use actually the 4 dimensions, which is a political, social, economic, and environmental as their vulnerability frameworks, which is 4/5 of what we have in dashboards right now.
Okay, but if you, for example, go on social vulnerability, you will find the same results on the hub and the platform, or not? Yes.
I hope yes.
I hope so.
Yes.
Okay. One question that is more maybe to Andrea. How can a user distill answers to the following questions? For example, which country, sub-region, municipality is most vulnerable to landslides, to floods, or this kind of hazards? Yeah. So can you select basically on the hazard level as well, or do you always have to go through the nuts level?
At the moment, no, the index encompasses all the hazard, meaning that basically we have the physical dimension, that is the hazard related dimension, while the others are more socioeconomic, it's true. So the idea is that to have a first step to answer basically the need for any index related to some specific hazard. In order to do that, we follow let's say, the first easiest step is to include economic losses and fatalities from past events. In the scientific literature, there are lots of studies that study vulnerability through losses from past events. So we introduce this dimension that we call physical, in which we take into account all the economic losses and all the fatalities from all the hazards. In theory, we can also separate this physical dimension for different hazards by taking into consideration only the losses for one hazard. At the moment, we are not doing it. It's something that we want to add in any case in further developments, because we had this release of the dashboard, of the updated dashboard in November 2023. So we just released that. But in the next period, let's say at least 1 year, we will have a huge review again to introduce new indicators, improve the indicators that we have, and also to ideally to get some more information about the hazards.
Okay. Thank you for that. Another question, how often are you updating the data? Is it once a year? Is it half a year? Is it depending on the releases from Eurostat or?
Mainly once a year, because then after June, let's say in the Q3, Q4 of the year, usually, because in that case we are pretty sure that 99.9% of the data from Eurostat should be fine, at least.
Okay.
If there is something missing, should be very, very, very few data. So usually toward the ends of the year.
But the positive thing is that you have a plan for updating, because I've seen so many platforms where the data somehow is then ending in 2000, in the year of the release, let's put it that way. And then you probably can use it 1 or 2 years after, but then it's quite outdated.
We're really going for the long term here. So we've been doing this. We've been doing this. It's been, I mean, you know how it works. It's been a bit up and down over the last 5 or 8, almost many years now.
Yeah.
But our goal is always the long term. That's why we're also interested in hosting certain projects, because we know the projects sometimes they come, they get funded, they go, and then suddenly it disappears. So sometimes we want to host that methodology or the results that they have, so people can come and see it easily and understand what was done in the past, and you know how it relates to what's being done now. So we're definitely going for the long term with these projects.
That's good to know, and probably you will be approached by some mission projects in the future to deal with that data or cooperate, whatever. That's good. A question is also the relation to the UN disaster risk framework and the two platforms. Is there a link?
So this
particular this Inventar database.
Yeah, this Inventar database. So the losses, basically the reporting. No, we don't have that at the moment. We're in discussions with them constantly. I mean, we speak with them all the time, but no, we don't. There's no connection right now. This might be something. Might be something going forward, but there's no specific relation at the moment. No.
But that brings me also to a question that came into my mind. Are you using the data from the insurance companies like Swiss Re or
No. No. We only use data which is freely and openly available online. So if we have it and it has to have European coverage. If it has it, we will for sure do it. And over the next year, we're actually going to monitor lots of sources to see. Map lots of sources specifically for lost data to see where the best data can be found. But for us, it's always a limitation, but also a strength. I think that we only focus on open data to get this.
Yeah, I think this is really an added value, because working with regional authorities, they don't often have the money and the time and all these things to organize the data. And here it might require a bit of time playing around with the hub to understand how it works. But when you have understood, then it's at least good to use.
Yeah, I will just put a quick disclaimer, because we're doing lots of work over the last 6 months, and we have planned lots of work over the next 6 months. So if there's anything which is not clear to you, if you have a look at it, you let us know, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. But some sections you will see sometimes they might go down for a second, because we're updating them and we're doing lots of big changes at the same time, especially on the back end. So
okay. There's one more question. Do you need a specific browser to use it? It says Chrome is not supported. I'm not aware of this, but maybe someone has experienced this.
I don't know, Andrea. I didn't try Chrome, to be honest. I'm using Firefox. It seems to be working fine.
Okay, so far we tried Firefox, Chrome, and Edge, and on all the 3 browsers, it didn't provide any issue. If there is any users that use another type of browser and encounter any issue, please let us know so we can have a look.
Okay, while I'm waiting for further questions, Maria, can you come in with the slide of questions as a short break in between, and then we'll take another round of questions from the audience to GRC. Okay, the link has also been copied into the chat. The first question is, how do you think the vulnerability dashboard could be useful from a policymaker perspective? So please type in your questions, your answers, and then we create the word cloud here. Don't be shy. At least 3 answers are typed. Very useful. That's a good start. Okay, to design targeted policies, hotspots, I assume to identify them, to predict impacts of a predicted hazard. I know from the first slide a question that we don't have too many policymakers here in the room, so probably this is a question that is a bit too specific for some of us. Overlay with actual losses and damages to raise awareness, difficult to answer, sometimes really simple to identify local hazards and possible action forward. But Gustav, if you have practical experience from the region, please share that with us, of course. While people are still have the possibility to type. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. No, just to say that we had, especially over this last year, when we speak a lot about the Committee of the Regions, and we have lots of collaboration with them at the moment, and they're pushing a lot, specifically vulnerability, to be adopted into, for example, or to be used, or let's say advised when we think about cohesion policy and so on. At the same time, we had a presentation of our dashboards similar to this, but a bit more in detail for the region of Puglia in Italy. So that's a NUTS2 region in the southern Italy, and it was very well received. And also, it's what we got as a feedback from that presentation was sometimes that they say, there's lots of information about hazards and about black and white information about exposure and those things. Vulnerability, it's a bit more complex, and you have lots of socioeconomic factors which are often not taken into considerations when you use vulnerability curves and damage functions. So that's very useful for them. And what we wanted to do with them at some point going forward, we want to talk to them directly, to the regional directors, present it, and they can understand, where can we invest for adaptation. And we want to see with them directly, this is the framework, this is the indicators that we're using. How useful is it for you at your level? Then you would have to probably go to the indicator level specifically and look at that. So we had experience in the past presenting it. It was really positive for us, and we hope they will get back to us again so we can speak with them further, and also other regions if requested. Yeah. So that was very good for us.
Okay, yeah, I think from the answers here, there is also quite a positive feedback that it is useful for different purposes. You can still type in here, but I would like to go to the next question as well. What information, if any, is currently missing from the vulnerability dashboard that would be useful from your work? Probably this is a question difficult to answer because you have not spent too much time in researching the platform. But if something comes up, and then Gustav and Andrea can correct because it might be there. It might just have been overlooked. But the answers to this question might also give an indication of what the main difficulties are in organizing data and finding information in many cases. Yeah. disaggregation by hazard type. I mean, this is Gustav, this is a general question. I mean, the risk data hub is not only on climate risk, I assume it's seen as the full spectrum of risks that can occur.
Yeah, it's an all hazard approach, and also lots of these things. When you go to by hazard, then you have to take a step back and include exposure and hazard data in there. Then we have hazard specific, no.
Specific,
So
yeah.
so we always try to direct people to see the full picture, not only focus on vulnerability. It's very important. You can affect it, but take a step back, you get the hazard dependency as well, because then you do a risk assessment for a specific hazard.
Yeah.
So that's that. But it's very important for us to have that as good as possible, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and about the hazards, so it takes time, because what we're trying to do, we're really looking for the absolute best data we can find by hazard. So if you go there, I don't know exactly how many we have now. We have a few. We're adding them, but really when we're confident that this data is exactly what anyone can use, and it will be really reliable and transparent, so they can get it. So this is very important for us. That's why sometimes, people want to run, but we have to walk sometimes to take it easy, to see, step by step, and we're getting there. Right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's also a valid point, because when I started, or I was involved in the negotiations of the floods directive a long time ago, 2005-6, and when the first flood hazard maps have been produced with really bad data sometimes, it was interesting to see how the reaction of the insurance companies were. And I mean, there is quite some. I mean, when you look at it and you try to do strategic investment, you probably are not going to do that any longer in a dark red zone, or the NAT3 level, even if the risks within the NAT3 are completely different from one side of the river to the other. Yeah, but so if working with incomplete or bad data, it's not the best thing. Yeah. Okay, and I think we have one more Slido question. Yeah, which component related to disaster risk is the most important one to support your work? That's a vote question. So please select your answer. Okay. A couple of people have dropped out already, but still almost 60 are here to answer that. So, okay. If you have any further technical questions or questions what the hub can provide, please feel free to type it into the chat. As Michi already answered, we will share the recordings. We will share the links to the platform. And if you want to register for the second part for tomorrow, which is on the losses, yeah, you can still register. The link is also in the chat, provided a bit up. In the meantime, we got a couple of people leaving, but they were quite happy with the presentation and the interesting thing, how interesting it was. So on the question on the Slido, we still see that disaster risks are the most prominent component, that is where information is needed, and then also the vulnerability. Yeah, and then the rest of the elements of a risk assessment are ranked further down. Yeah, if there are no further questions, I would like to thank Andrea and Gustav for this really interesting presentation. I would jump into the next one final Slido, not Slido, one final, yeah, Slido, yes. Is the presentation helpful or not? From the answers in the chat, I think yes, and that's showing now up. So feel also free to share the video. It's going to be on YouTube. You can share that with your colleagues. It's going to be probably there for the next, a longer time until the hub is significantly updated, probably. But yeah, and it should be ready on online early next week, Monday, Tuesday, I assume, when it's uploaded. Okay, having said that, Maria, can you close yours? Can I make
a last comment on it? Just to be, I'll just close from our side as well for today. You know, so tomorrow I'll repeat many things tomorrow, but okay. So really, thank you so much for organizing this, Thomas and colleagues. It's very useful for us, and to all of you that gave feedback. You know, please continue to give us feedback through the functional mailbox or to our private addresses, so we see what you think and reach out to us if you need. We're always here. So thank you so much for that.
And Gustav, let us know if we, from the mission secretariat or the mission implementation platform, can support you with connecting you to the regions.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And yeah, have a nice coffee break as a next stop in your day. And thank you, and see you tomorrow, some of you. Bye-bye.